Kelly Bear here. Lovely to see you here. Have you followed on from the previous two videos? If so, wow, I'm impressed that you've stuck around for this rambling old witch. But yeah, I'm here again today doing a little batch of videos to catch up with the Sunshine State Witches Neopagan November #challenge thing for this month. And I will be answering today questions 7, 8 and 9. And I'm just going to jump straight in. We don't need all the preamble because that was all in the first one. If you want to see the preamble, go back to the couple of videos back. So yeah, and I'll wait here while you do that. Okay, you done? Cool. Okay, let's go. So day 7 is in the forest ... The first thing that popped into my head when I read that was the Terry Cratchit, Bob Cratchit. I'm mixing up my Muppets Christmas Carol. Well, not Muppets Christmas. Does anyone else just think of a Muppets Christmas Carol as the definitive Christmas Carol? And like Michael Caine is like the best Ebenezer Scrooge ever. Sorry. Yeah, in the forest, it made me think of a Terry Pratchett quote from the Wintersmith, which I've not read. I've only read Night's Watch books by Terry Pratchett. I do need to fix that because, yeah, Granny Weatherwax, I'm aware of who she is, but I really need to read some other books. But the quote is, and I'm just reading it off so I do not fluff it, which is, "A witch ought never to be frightened in the darkest forest, Granny Weatherwax had once told her, because she should be sure in her soul that the most terrifying thing in the forest was her." And I really, really like that quote because it sort of emboldens you to be like, yeah, don't you know, when you're like walking through a woodland and you're a bit like, and you might hear some like cracks and like creaks and noises and you're like, ooh, but then you'd be like, no, damn it, I'm the scariest thing here. Although I live in the UK and, you know, I've gone on hikes through the Cairngorms and the Highlands of Scotland and through the woodlands and the pine forests, and there's not much to be frightened of. I don't know, they may be reintroducing wolves into the UK forest, but I think it's under like in certain enclosed forests. I don't think they're letting them run wild. But that may be different in certain other parts of the world. Like I know that in North America, for example, you get like mountain lions and bobcats and bears. And I think maybe wolves. I don't know. And maybe Sasquatches. I don't know. Maybe some Bigfoot. Some big feet, some big thigh. Yeah, maybe not always the scariest thing in the forest, but you understand the sentiment. But I super love woodlands. I feel like it's my natural terrain other than the city. I am an urban witch. I live in London. I am born and raised Londoner, and yeah. It's you know, I feel like magic. London is a really magical city, and a lot of witches always, I mean, I say I'd love to move away to a little cottage at the edge of a forest and just be a sort of bog witch, but really my heart, I'm a Londoner, I'm a city girl. And magic can really thrive in cities, and I'm very lucky that London is the greenest city in the world from what I recall, and I have a lot of green spaces very close to me. The part of London that I grew up in had a lot of green spaces. I grew up, you know, my secondary school, which would be a high school in North America and maybe Australia, I'm not sure, was attached literally to Hampstead Heath. And not far from there was like Regent's Park and Primrose Hill, that kind of thing. And yet I live not, you know, I can get a bus up to Epping Forest. I have a really amazing park, not like just a 10-minute walk away from me, which is where I walk my dog. And it's got little woodland areas, and it's got brooks and streams and fields, and then there's the marshes and the water, the wetlands. Like, I'm surrounded by greenery. So, you know, greenery and woodlands can thrive in cities, but magic can thrive in cities. Anyway, I'm distracting myself by talking about cities when I'm meant to be talking about the forest. But yeah, when I'm in the forest, I'm so happy. I remember staying in Yosemite National Park and just feeling so comfortable and at ease and happy and content there. Whenever I go to Scotland, I go on hiking trails through the pine forests, and in the Cairngorms specifically. I have my favourite loch, which is Loch Morlich, not too far from the reindeer centre there. Really, really beautiful trails and scenery, and it's just so soothing, especially when it's raining, like walking through the trees on the trails with the rain, and looking out over all the mountains and the hills. It's magical. I feel rejuvenated and content. Anyway, so that was a bit of a weird arse ramble, but here we are. So number 8 is incense. Now, I fudged this because I spoke about spice in the first video, which made me think of my incense that I make for my daily offerings, which is full of lots of yummy sort of things that you would put in pumpkin spice, like cloves and cardamom and cinnamon and that kind of thing. Benzoin, you wouldn't put that in pumpkin spice, don't put that in pumpkin spice, but it smells vanilla-y, so that goes into my incense as well. So I've already talked about incense. I'm like, oh, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you 2 things. Oh, I forgot, I probably should have got these before, but I'm going to get up. What I'll do is I will edit the video and go, and then I'll come back with the things that I meant to get. Actually, I just realised I'm in OBS. I can just pause and then unpause. Haha. And I'm back. As if by magic. But yeah, so when I first started in the craft many moons ago, many moons ago, I would just use either dupe cones or the stick incense. I did not, I let it be on record, I did not burn stick insects. I would never do that. I love stick insects. They're so cool, aren't they? Insects get a bad rap, but other than flies, which can just bugger off. I really don't like flies. I'm quite fond of most. And the moths that try and eat my clothes, that's really stressful. But other than that, bugs are pretty cool. Anyway. And I know we still need flies because, you know, they'll help eat us, like decompose us when we're brown bread, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so I thought what I'd do is I'll talk about my tips for incense, and then I got into like people going, oh, you need to use charcoal discs and stuff for your incense, and you have loose incense. I was like, oh, okay. So I felt like I had upgraded when I got a little bit older and I had access to a bit more money, and I was able to, I still wasn't buying online witchy stuff, like, because it wasn't so much a thing in the early to mid noughties, not for me anyway. I didn't have online banking or anything like that. I didn't have a credit card still, even in my 20s. I didn't get a credit card till my 30s. Anyway, so, but I found like the whole waiting for the charcoal disc to like start to go like more white, you know, like when you're waiting for a barbecue. And then like the fact that it seems to burn stuff so quickly, and it's very smoky, especially if it's like on a really cold winter's day and you don't want to have the window open because it's pissing with rain outside. And like if you have the window open like for the smoke, but you can't have the window closed because the smoke, and you know you're in a rental and the smoke alarm's going to go off. Ask me how I know. So what I got a couple of years ago was this baby, and it's just, mine has a little pentacle in it because it looks like a little black cauldron. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this to show it like a makeup influencer, but it's better you can see it better like that. And it just has a little tea light in the, have you met me yet? I'm very clumsy. Those of you who don't really know me, this is very pretty standard for me. Anyway, I'm not going to cut that out, it's staying in. So let's just take this off for a second because it'll help me show anyway. So it has a mesh, and I have burnt stuff just directly on the mesh, as you can see, because it's a little bit, and I was like, ew, no, and like bits of incense, like when I was doing like herbs and things, were falling onto the candle. Okay. We're falling onto the candle, which in itself is a little bit of a fire hazard. So what I did is I just took this out and I drew round it and cut a couple of like bits of foil to make a little foil disc, which I then put my incense on. And the great thing is you don't get the smoke, but you do get the scent. And it lasts longer, and you don't have to keep topping it up, unless I've just was using charcoal discs wrong my whole life. Don't get me wrong, I still have some charcoal discs and I will break them out on occasion depending on what I'm doing, and they can be quite useful for certain spell work. Sometimes you want that smoke, I don't know, like for certain things. This still gives off a smoke, and you can still see the benzoin clearly. I don't know if you can see, but it's been melting into a gooey lump. It starts to bubble and soften. So it does eventually burn away, but it takes a really long time. And these bits, the bits of like cinnamon bark and cloves, less so, but you still get that lovely warm smell from them. So that's my tip. If you are worried about smoke, if you are worried about you constantly having to top up a disc, or you just find getting hold of charcoal discs difficult maybe where you are, I don't know. I really recommend one of these. It's just made from soapstone and it's really cute. Look at it, it's like just like a little cauldron, and you could get all sorts of different ones with different, I've seen ones with like triple moons and all sorts of things on them. So that's what I use. And then to make my incense, as I had mentioned in the first video, I literally use a mortar and pestle. I have a proper molcajete for my kitchen, like the volcanic rock one, which is all nicely seasoned and prepped, and I did all the rice grinding and all that, and garlic grinding with that stays in the kitchen. Please make sure you have a separate one. So this one is just a cheap one I picked up at TK Maxx a few years ago, and it is ceramic with a wooden one, and it's smaller. It's got a little pouring lip, but I've never used anything liquid in it. You can see the bottom, and I almost exclusively grind my favorite sort of offerings incense in there, and then all I do is I just stick it in a little, this is just a reused jar of, this says best before September 2018, so that's how long I've been reusing this jar. This is just, I think it had like pesto or something in it, I don't know, capers, who knows. We all love some jars and bottles, don't we, as witches and pagans? You gotta love that, especially if you're into herbalism. All the jars, all the bottles. I have too many, but it's really hard to let go of them. Anyway, let me just double check. I think, do I have another question? Number 9, I will never forget. There could be a couple of, I'm going to turn my ring light off, I think, because, oh no. Let me just turn it down, because the sun's coming out now, so it's like throwing off the camera. Something I'll never forget is really, do you know what? Something's just popped into my head. Okay. Back when I was still really, really new to paganism and witchcraft, I would, work through exercises in books, like many of us still do. I still work through exercises in books. Who doesn't love a good book to work through? I'm currently very slowly working my way through Brianna Saucy's Making Magic, which is really cool. I was doing a creative visualization sort of path working thing, and I can't remember where I got, whether it had been laid out in a book. I don't know if it was maybe like one of Shakti Gawain's creative visualization books or something. I can't remember. It was a really long time ago, and I remember it was a really profound experience. And my mum wasn't home, my sister was staying at a friend's house, so I was like, right, I have this time to myself without being disturbed where I can do this path working, this creative visualization, whatever it was. And it was all about, and I think it was one of the first ones I'd ever done, but it was all about sort of going through, being guided through a field, and then into a woodland, and then into a clearing within the trees. Now the light's gone again because the sun's gone behind a cloud. Sorry, so London weather. It's a weird joke. If you don't like the weather, just wait 20 minutes. Sometimes you don't even have to wait 20. And it was about sitting on a stone, and I'm sure, I've done visualizations and path workings like this since, and continue to do so, and it's one of my favorites, is walking away through into a woodlands, going into a clearing, sitting down, and then seeing who comes to you. I know that's a way you can also meet familiars and spirit allies and all sorts. But anyway, so the whole idea was that you were going to sit in this space and just feel the sensations. What can you hear? What can you smell? That kind of thing. And wait to see who came to me. And I remember this woman coming up to me, and I was getting real like goddess vibes, and she was very luminous and golden, and she was very heavily pregnant. I really remember that, which is interesting as someone who's never wanted children and is almost a bit sort of terrified of pregnancy and gets a bit irked at almost every tarot deck having a pregnant empress in. You know, some are fine, but like, come on, almost every deck. So yeah, it was interesting. This woman came up to me, and she was very nurturing, and it was almost like she said something to me, and I can't remember what that was, but it was almost like she didn't speak. It was just transmitted straight into my brain. But she also put her hand on my shoulder, and I felt this, even just thinking about it right now is giving me goosebumps and making me feel that, almost that feeling all over again. And I felt this unbelievable sense of serenity and calm come over me. It was, yeah. And I remember once I came out of that visualization, that path working, I wrote it down in my little book of shadows, and yeah, it really stuck with me, and it still pops into my head on and off to this day. It was really intense for a first path working, and I think it's probably down to the fact that I've been doing a lot of meditation work to build up to that, to get myself into that zone, and the fact that I am a terrible daydreamer, and I have a very active and vivid imagination, so those things tied together were really helping me with that visualization and that path working. Of course, you don't have to be able to visualize in order to do path workings, and now there are more magical practitioners and magical authors being more inclusive of people who have aphasia. I know that Aidan Wachter has often mentioning Aidan Wachter, but I read him a lot and listen to him a lot and really appreciate his work. Talks about himself not actually having a very strong visualization, mind's eye, and so he often goes by a sense of sort of feeling and other senses, because you know, you have other senses. And what if you have always been blind? Your visualization would be different. You wouldn't see things the same way that other people. You might still have a mind's eye, but it would be different. Or you might rely on other senses, which is fine. I think Matt Oren's Making Magic, which I know is out in the States and was meant to come out in the UK today, but I've got an email saying that it is delayed, and I'm like, but I want it now. I know that Matt took on board that obviously Psychic Witch is very visualization heavy, and he took on board that he realized that some people don't have that ability, like their brains are literally wired differently, and I think that that's something that is a consideration in his new book, so I'm really interested to read that and see where that goes and how that works. But yeah, I think the main problem I had with sitting down and focusing is my squirrel brain, so that meditation, that sort of getting into that settled state is the hardest thing for me. Anyway, that was a lot of waffling. That for me now caps off 1 through 9, and I think what I will do is I will continue to film them in chunks of 3, but I've done 3 in a row today, and my throat's getting a little froggy, so the next one I'll probably try and put up, I might put these all up at the same time, I don't know, and then the next ones will go up every 3 days. I don't know, I haven't really thought about that. Anyway, you don't need to know all the thought processes behind that, but you'll see them when you see them. But thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you check out the Sunshine State Witch and the other people answering this, taking part in this challenge. Yeah, join in if you have a channel or you want to create a channel. This is a challenges and tags are really great ways to start a channel. I started my channel with a tag many years ago now, 7 years ago it'll be in January. And yeah, jump on in, or just put in the comments your answers if you don't want to make a video. Or you know, always welcome to comment down below. But thank you so much. I appreciate you. Make sure you look after yourself. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.